So if you're going to have a big announcement, big event, best time to have it is right the same time Apple's doing its event, don't you think? That's when you're going to get the maximum press. For some reason, obviously they didn't know ahead of time. Sony planned. Fortunately they moved their event to noon so that Apple had just ended. And of course, you've not after 2 hours watching streaming video of the Apple event, you've got to go watch the Sony event. By the way, did you know Dell had an event also on Wednesday?
You mentioned that earlier. I didn't even realize.
Yeah, nobody did. So we didn't get a chance to watch. We were busy watching the Apple event. But Sam Machkovech, hi, Sam.
There he
Sam, I'm going to do it right. Machkovech.
You got it. Guys, we are wasting time, and I know that you want to hear about the PlayStation 4 event that you did not watch because you were too busy Appling. Now, here's the thing, though. Very unnecessary event because every single thing about the PlayStation 4 Pro leaked except for its name. The PlayStation 4 Pro was announced months ago thanks to developer leaks.
Is the Pro the Neo?
So the PlayStation 4 Neo was the thing that leaked a while back, described as a system with a little bit more power to enable 4K gaming.
And that's
the idea being people want 4K TVs and 4K games on those TVs. So we took a look a while back at the leaked specs that were handed to developers because Sony wanted games for their 4K set. And we saw the part that was listed, which was a 4.2 teraflop system. If you don't know what that means, it means not powerful enough to run a native 4K game. That's quite a bit of juice and a little bit more than twice the power of the PlayStation 4. But 4K is a lot of pixels. So everyone was wondering, how the heck are they going to get this to work? And what we had guessed, and what Sony absolutely admitted, is that you are probably not going to get a pure 4K signal from any game on the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is its official name, no longer the Neo. Instead, Sony is advertising what's called a checkerboard effect, so that if you're running a game on your nice 4K set, it's going to take less than 4K, maybe 2K, I guess, so it's about twice the number of pixels of a 1080p set, and checkerboard them up, fine-tune those pixels so that it looks better than just taking your 1080p signal and quadrupling it.
So how does it look? You've seen it, right? But does it look okay?
I was not at the event, and hilariously, Sony's been putting videos up that are in 4K that actually have motion blur in the video. So if you go on YouTube and set 4K and watch and then freeze frame, it's got all artifacting. It's ridiculous. I don't know bother. But there's two things happening here. First off, 4K being advertised. And yes, what we're seeing does look quite good, especially in motion. 4K, I personally believe, is not the most incredible effect in motion. It's very hard to see. At some point, your eyeballs can only perceive so much pixel density. But it does look good in motion. The other thing that Kyle Orland from Ars Technica got to see was the HDR effect of video games. That high dynamic range. Now, this is the standard that's being implemented in even more sets, 4K sets now. And the reason being, HDR offers a perceptible image boost in a way that we believe 4K does not. HDR, the shortest way of putting it is darker darks, whiter whites, and brighter colors all next to each other, so you don't get the sort of color bleed that you're going to get from other displays. So the idea being, when you see a normal TV and an HDR TV, especially in a 3D video game where there's a lot of stuff moving around that you're controlling, you're going to see these really cool light and shadow effects in way more eye-popping manner. The way to put it is, there was a demo of the Uncharted series. It was a beach scene. And if you watch it on a normal TV, a lot of the water and sand effects are kind of washed out in this very bright light, sandy ocean scene. Put that on an HDR display, and you get to see this sort of fine shimmering of the sand pixels and the water, the way it reflects, occurring. There's just no way to show this on YouTube on an average screen, and YouTube doesn't even offer HDR support currently for average people, especially on computer screens. So really, if you were not at the event, you didn't really get the sales pitch that Sony wants you to have, which is that HDR does provide something cool and that you should pay all this money for both your new screen and your new system.
But wait a minute, because aren't they going to update all the existing PS4s with HDR software?
That is kind of correct. What's happening is we're going to get an unlocked HDR upgrade in every PlayStation 4 that's shipped since 2013. I geeked out earlier this week on the fact that what this means is there's an HDMI controller inside of every PlayStation 4 that was rated for a spec that didn't exist at the time.
Oh, interesting.
Because HDR requires a certain amount of metadata and a certain amount of bandwidth. It's not actually that much more, but the idea is that HDR and 4K are kind of linked together. The HDMI spec is this just minefield of garbage. But bottom line is, that's going to happen in your PlayStation 4. What games will support it is the question, because game makers are going to have to go back through and code that stuff. Additionally, your 1080p signal on a 4K set doesn't look that good. If you go to a lot of these Gizmo review sites, they will let you know that 1080p upscaling on a lot of these 4K sets just doesn't look very good.
Right.
It's fine, but you're definitely going to notice that blur. That quadrupling of pixels is super noticeable. So taking your PlayStation 4 and hooking it up to an HDR display is probably going to be 4K. So you're going to get that perceptible light and shadow pop, but that's going to come at the expense of blurriness, which maybe Sony will Sony will expect you then to go, oh, well, clearly I need to spend $309 more dollars in the PlayStation 4 Pro.
I'm lucky. I never bought a PS4. Yep. Now, they have one that's the Slim is coming out right now. That's just the same PS4 in a smaller package, much like the Xbox One S, right?
Well, the Xbox One S did provide a tiny bit of update, especially in supporting UHD Blu-ray.
Yeah, I bought it for the Blu-ray player, which Sony's not putting in their PS4.
Sony is not putting that UHD Blu-ray player, wow, words, in either the PlayStation 4 Slim or the PlayStation
kind of surprising, because I bought a PS3 because of the Blu-ray player in the PS3, and I would have bought a PS4 Pro if they'd had a UHD player.
Sony helped usher in Blu-ray into everybody's living room with the PS3. So.
But I think they're right. I'll tell you why. The people who buy PS4s are gamers. A lot of people bought Xbox Ones, myself included, thought of it as a media center. So I want the One S because I have a 4K UHD TV. I wanted the player for it. Actually, went the other way around. I bought the One S, then I had to buy a new TV. That happens sometimes.
As it often does, right?
Leo, does that 4K set of yours already have Netflix and Amazon Video built in?
Right.
So Sony's come out and said, oh, we don't need to put a Blu-ray player in there. We have the streaming apps. And my response is, the TV already has the streaming app. What's the value proposition? I think this actually would have been a really good $15 to $20 per unit to make people say, all right, this is going to knock everything out for me, at least in the first wave.
Yeah.
I think the first wave, I think people, early adopters, are going to go in, who's going to get a 4K set, are going to want just that one system that does it all. And Microsoft had a field day advertising all the things that their Xbox One S, which is $300, can do. It's going to have HDR. It already has UHD, HDR streaming, and it's got that Blu-ray, UHD Blu-ray. And that's a big deal right now in this short term, in this year and a half, before 4K is bigger and before more streaming bandwidth issues are dealt with. If I want to watch Netflix in 4K right now, I better hope nobody else in my neighborhood is using Netflix and I've got all that bandwidth clogging. I already deal with artifacts with 1080p streaming, let alone with UHD. So the disc is a really nice thing to guarantee that. And that's a short-term thing. UHD streaming, assuming 4K is really the thing that blows up, is going to stabilize in the future. But in this first year and a half to 2 years of one of these electronic brands establishing itself as the 4K thing, I thought this was a much more blown opportunity than some other people think.
Interesting. Now, let me ask, so we have the Slim available now. The Pro is coming out next month, right? Late October? November.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about PlayStation VR? Did they talk about that at all?
They talked about the fact that the PlayStation 4 Pro will offer certain enhancements to PlayStation VR. It's going to be essentially higher resolution and a little bit more detail. That being said, every event I've been to that has had PlayStation VR, and I've been to a few of these over the past few years, has all run on the original PlayStation 4. It's all run very smoothly. It's actually using a resolution doubling trick, because 90 frames a second in terms of how fast the image is going in your face, like when it's right there, is essential to keep nausea down. And it's done a very good job of that with its little trick. Please enter your birth date if you're watching on the web stream. It works very nicely. It works very neatly. I am the canary in the coal mine for Ars Technica's VR people, and I find it works nicely. I was even testing it at the PAX West expo just last weekend. Works great. I'm excited about PlayStation VR, and I don't see PlayStation 4 Pro gaining that much of a noticeable benefit, because the screen, the pixels on the headset are pretty minimal. They're not as many as your Oculus Rift
So
or
they
your
don't need it. They don't
HTC
need the higher end of
Vive.
the
I don't think you're going to see that much of a pop as you might expect.
You got to imagine the faster CPU is going to help it to a degree.
I think that may be a Band-Aid for certain games, but currently there's a spec that's locked. People making stuff for VR don't want to limit any consumers. They understand it's a losing battle to sell. If you look at the HTC Vive and Oculus's sales numbers, which have been estimated out there in the wild, they're not great. People are sort of scared about how many people are actually buying these things.
Right.
So the last thing anyone wants to hear is, oh, you need more stuff in order to get this thing
In fact,
working.
that's what developers did with both the Vive and the Oculus. It works as well with the lowest end video card that supports it as it does with a higher end video card. There's no need to get the 1080.
Right.
It works fine with a 970. So one last question. So we should just say once again, the Slim is available September 15th. That's going to be $299. That's essentially the same as a regular PS4, and will be, along with all PS4s in the market right now, supported with new updates that'll give you HDR of some kind. Yeah. The PS4 Pro comes out November 10th. That is $399, and that does have a faster CPU, a big hard drive, upgraded GPU, and this upsampled, it sounds like, 4K.
And just real quick, if you don't pony up for the 4K set, there will be benefits for your games, and that's where there's some confusion because some games are going to have multiple settings. This kind of feels like PC gaming, where you can choose, do I want a smoother frame rate, or do I want more detail and more crazy stuff happening on the screen at once? And it's going to be a developer by developer decision. Some older software is going to be upgraded accordingly. Newer software is going to have some sort of boost as a result. I expect at the very least frame rate unlocks are going to be the thing, but that's really that we don't have that much data on how much of that is going to happen. You'll get some benefit, but we're really stopping and waiting to see exactly what 1080p benefits we are going to get out of this.
You excited about Super Mario Run?
Super Mario Run for the iPhone looks great. I was shocked to see Shigeru Miyamoto
kidding
on an Apple stage.
No kidding.
What the heck? Now, the endless runner genre, in which you don't use a joystick, you're able to have people run around on your phone, that's been around for a few years. There's been games like Cannabalt and Rayman Jungle Run. These are very nice on the phone because they solve that problem of I don't have a joystick, but I want to play old school retro games. So this totally makes sense that something called Super Mario Run is the answer to how do you make Super Mario work on a smartphone. So Mario just runs and runs and runs. He's going through the new Super Mario Brothers universe. There's wall jumping and there's other sort of tricks that let you go back and forth on the screen. But otherwise, it's looking to be a pretty simple sort of experience. And I'm just very curious as to how this is really going to stand out, other than sales, from what's already come out in the world of the endless runner genre. I think this is going to introduce a lot of people to this genre that might otherwise not bother. I think this is going to just definitely do well. Now, one thing I think is interesting is they didn't really say this very clearly during the presentation, but this is going to be free.
Right.
As in, when the game comes out, you can try a few levels without paying a dime, and then you're going to be able to pay a quote-unquote determined price to keep on playing.
It's not freemium in the sense that you'll have in-app purchases. You'll either get a few levels for free or you'll buy the full game.
That's what it sounds like, although we'll have to wait and see if Nintendo comes up with it.
And not till December, which shocked me. I thought it would be
right in time for the holidays.
Time for the holidays.
I'm sure that they are just scrambling to get this done in time for December, because otherwise I'm surprised Nintendo didn't just stealth launch it and say, here it is, it's ready to go. But Nintendo's been in a weird place in terms of what they are and are not telling us. They've got the NX coming. But they did say that we should not expect Super Mario Run to specifically be involved with the new system. There will be a little bit of crossover because Nintendo has a My Nintendo sort of social network rewards sort of thing that will work on, that it'll transfer for both systems, but don't expect this to blend in necessarily with the NX. This is its own distinct smartphone thing. It's a very smart move on their part. It does mean that the other smartphone games they'd already announced for other games called Animal Crossing and Fire Emblem, these are pretty popular series, and their entries were supposed to come out by the end of this year, and they've been bumped now. Super Mario's been put into the pole position.
Interesting.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't think anyone's really crying in the long run. The stock market certainly
this was just fine. They were very excited. I'm excited. It looks like a lot of fun, and a continuous running game makes a lot of sense for that platform, as you say.
And,
Sam, go ahead.
And you get the character recognition. I think that's why Pokemon was so successful this summer, is because people recognize that. So when people walk into the Apple Store and see Mario, that's an immediate sell. So
Sam Machkovech, Ars Technica. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Sam. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for dealing with my audio issues. I have to run to a Street Fighter tournament because that is my life. But I really appreciate you guys.
Are you playing or just watching?
God, I would be last of. if there was less than last place, that's where I'd be. But.
Sam reports on culture at ours.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I was going to say, what character do you play?
Yeah, I was going to ask
watching, yeah.
Zangief all day.
Zangief. Very cool.
You kids and your wacky games.
Now, before we move on away from Mario, it's important to note that Nintendo did say that Mario Run will also be coming for Android, but no date determined. But it will. They are. So it's not iOS.
It's a
only.
temporary Apple exclusive.
Yes, right.
But temporary.
At some point, and it's going to come on Android.
Yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't put it on Android.